Shalom, Israel, Shalom. Brother Ezekiel out of W5 Detroit Camp coming to you with another video. Before I start this video, I want to give all honor and glorification to the Most High God, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. Yahweh being the name of his Heavenly Father, of our Heavenly Father, who the world calls God, and Yahushai being the name of his only begotten Son, who is the King and Savior of the nation of Israel, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And Shalom to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. Greetings, right? In this video, I believe I titled it Ecclesiastes 12, Giving the Sense, right? The reason why I want to go into Ecclesiastes 12, because this chapter is essentially going into, obviously, the end times, but essentially the times that we're watching today that's transpiring right before us, right? That, of course, is prophecy that you can link up with it, but Most High willing, I can give the sense on this chapter through the Spirit and power of the Most High that, it may come to light, right? So I'm going to grab a few precepts before we get into it, right? Because essentially it's a parable, right? Now it may be plain to others, depending on your understanding, how long you've been in this truth, how studied you are, but essentially it is a parable. It's the book of Psalms, chapter 72 and it's like 78 and verse 2. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old. So essentially that's what this is going into. It's a parable, right? That we're going to break down through the Spirit, bring it to life, and even correlate, certain words. We're going to correlate certain articles and even certain videos that's transpiring with these end times. Because a lot of prophecy is happening on earth right now. A lot of things are, coming unfold right before our eyes. And it's a new thing rapidly happening each and every day, right? Which, once again, it's been uttered, the dark sayings of, oh, it's not a new thing, right? This has been prophesied from the beginning, right? So we can't be ignorant of these things either, right? We got to search these things out. I can tell you in the book of Proverbs, chapter 50, it's like 25 and verse 2. It's the book of Sirach, chapter 5, and start at verse 1. It says, what? Be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or small. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to go into these prophecies, these parables, this understanding, and then especially with all the knowledge and wisdom and understanding that's currently on the earth right now, and not know what's going on. If you don't know what's going on, it's because you choose not to know what's going on. You choose not to search it out. You choose not to see what it's talking about. You to correlate it and match it with prophecy, because that's what brings the scriptures to life. Yes, you can read it. Yes, you can talk about it. But when you correlate it with history, when you correlate it with current events, when you correlate it with what's happening currently, especially with this chapter, which we're about to dive into, that's what gives the scriptures more, it resonates on a higher level. I just put it like that, just to make in layman's terms, essentially, right? But let's dive straight into it. This Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, remember thou thy creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the year draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. Right? So what does it mean to remember now thy creator in the days of thy youth? Who is our creator? Let's grab that real quick. Isaiah 43rd chapter. It's the book of Isaiah chapter 43 and start at verse 15. It says, I am the Lord, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. So that's Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai at the end of the day, right? He's our Creator, right? And it tells us what? That we're supposed to remember our Creator in the days of our youth. Why? Because in your youth, you're a little bit more vibrant. You have a little bit more vitality, right? You was, like the world likes to say, you're pretty much in your prime, right? Your physical prime, and there's little peaks that you reach, as you grow older, concerning what? Your youth. You have a lot more vitality. Let's grab that word. I got to pull it up, right? Vitality is going into what? The state of being strong and active energy, right? Liveliness, life, energy, right? Says what? Vitality means having a lively, animated spirit combined with strong physical and mental energy. It is a capacity to live, grow, and develop, often described as a life of force, or the ability to endure rigor. That's why when you're young, you can have certain jobs. You can work certain jobs where, especially if they're very laborious, at the end of the day, you have a lot more energy, you have a lot more muscle, you can kind of withstand it. But as you're older, you probably cannot work those same jobs, right? Because it's going to put a heavy workload on you. Your bones start to ache, break, things start to tear, you start to get a little bit more tired. So guess what? At the end of the day, that's what it means by seeking your creator in the days of your youth, Salakia, right? You're a little bit, a lot more vital, right? Because especially in your youth, you're a lot more strong. And how does that correlate with this society and right now today? Because essentially, in the days of your youth, guess what? That's right now today, right? Your youth is why you still have time, right? Before this place waxes worse and worse, seek the Lord, right? Let's grab that real quick. What's that? Isaiah 55. It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 55, and verse 6. It says, seek ye the Lord while he may be found, call ye upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto Yahweh. And he will have mercy upon him and to our God, and he will abundantly pardon. So going back to Ecclesiastes 12, these are the days where you need to be seeking the Lord while he may be found, right? While he is near. Because essentially this is where when you have sources of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right, at your disposal, and you're not seeking the Most High, or you being, you're procrastinating, or you're reluctant to turn from the Lord, turn to the Lord, and get out of your sin and from wickedness, or the old man or the old woman, guess what? It's only going to get worse for you. It's only going to get worse for this society. The Most High, the prophecies don't stop just because you're not seeking the Most High and you're taking your sweet time and you think you have all day. No, they're only going to, amp up more and more, right? Yahweh shall say in Matthew 24 that these days shall be shortened for the elect's sake. It says, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. And if you have pleasure right now in this society, if you have pleasure right now in working these long, drawn out hours, not really getting paid, what you're supposed to, you're putting money in bags with holes, like I tell you in Haggai chapter 1 and verse 6, and you still have pleasure in it with hyperinflation, gas prices is $5 to $10, depending on where you reside in. You may not know what's going on, and you may not be in the truth, right? So you essentially, no, you shouldn't be having no pleasure in these last days, right? And if you do, examine yourself, right? It says, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them, because I know who wants to go to work every day, who wants to continuously pay bills, who wants to continuously pay debt, who wants to continuously see the temptations and the wickedness multiply on the earth, who wants to continue to see these nations get away with murder and no judgment, no charges is brought unto them, right? They continue to just puff up with pride and deceive the people each and every day. And the people are just walking. They get dog walked, essentially. I believe that's the word that they use, right? Salaki. But that's what it means. Remember now, Creator, in the days of thy youth, meaning make haste, right? That's also going into Psalms chapter 119 and verse 60, right? Verse 2, it says, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, or nor the clouds return after the rain. So sun, light, moon, stars, what is that going into? Does that mean that the actual sun, light, moon, and stars is not going to be it's going to be, taken away or going away somewhere? No, because according to Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 35, if these ordinances are taken away, if something happens to them, the nation of Israel will be no more. So this is symbolic for wisdom and knowledge and understanding being taken away. It says, nor the clouds return after the rain, because what? Water is symbolic for what? Knowledge, right? What did Yahweh shall say? He said, he that believeth on me, as the scripture have said, out of his belly, meaning his mind, shall flow rivers of living water. That's John chapter 7 verse 38. Let's grab a precept on that. So go to the book of Isaiah chapter 13. Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 9. It says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it, right? And it says, for the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine, right? Because it's going to be major blackouts, it's going to be EMP attacks, right? You can read that in the book of Revelation chapter 16 and verse 9, right? You're going to see missiles, you're going to see nothing but black smoke going up in the air. That's what's kind of what we see right now with Israel, Iran, and the countries going on the eastern part of the world, right? And what America is involved with, right? That's just a glimmer, a small fraction of what's to come on the earth, right, in these last days. And it's going to amplify more and more, right? So that's essentially what that's going into. We reverse. It says, I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity. and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and lay low the hardiness of the terrible. Because judgment is coming unto this place, right? Let's grab one precept real quick. Man, we a lot of these precepts in Isaiah, right? It's Isaiah chapter 47. Because when Yahushua returns, when the Most High is starting to put major judgments into this place, hey man, this world has not ever seen. When you read the book of Habakkuk, I want to say chapter 3 and verse number 16, when he even seen the judgments, right, of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, he said, I'd rather be dead and not alive, right? Because that's how horrible it's going to be. So how much more us in these last days, right? We got to prepare ourselves, mentally, spiritually, and also physically, right? Because you're going to be moving. You're going to be a pilgrim on the earth, according to 2nd Ezra chapter 16 verse 40. So it's Isaiah chapter 47 and 3. It says, thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. And that's what we're seeing with Babylon the Great, right? A lot of the lies, a lot of the so-called deception, the wine, and the doctrine that they fed to the people, to the world for years, right? You got the so-called Indian man, the Hamite, the Elamite, you got the Ishmaelite, right? The Moabite, right? The Chinese man, so to speak, right? They come over to America and they just keep Christmas and they keep Easter and they keep Thanksgiving. But this is not their culture, right? This is not who they are, right? In regards to their people. But when they come over here, they do what? They take part of that wine, right? Because what it says about Esau in the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, they transgress by wine. So everybody's getting a cup. Everybody's just drinking whatever philosophies, ideologies, liberalism, and whatever they feed in the propaganda, right, to the masses at hand, right? But when Yahweh shall return, it says, I will not meet thee as a man. Meaning it's gonna be bloody, it's gonna get violent, it's gonna get like that, right? Essentially, right? So in regards to going back to this, why the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain, right? Because while you still have time to be able to seek the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, do so. And if you're tarrying, you're only putting yourself at a disadvantage, right? You're only putting yourself behind, right? Because you want to be excelling through the spirit each and every day, right? Let me grab this real quick. Ecclesiastes, what's that, 9th chapter, right? You can't take this truth as a joke. You can't really take it, as a thing and not, well, I'll get to it tomorrow. Well, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You have no idea what may transpire, right? Yahushua said in the book of Matthew, the 6th chapter, concerning, the current day, you don't know the evil thereof, greatly paraphrasing, right? Where's this at? Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 10. It says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do it with thy might, meaning with everything you can, all your power. But there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. Because essentially, all of us only has one life. And in this life, we have to give every single thing that we can, especially when you in this truth, to Yahweh Shem Shai. Because we're going to get a more severe punishment. Why? Because we knew better, right? Because Yahweh Shai said that, let's grab that real quick. Luke over the new tab. Luke the 19th chapter. Luke chapter 19. Salaki. Where I want to get. No, it's Luke. Slipped my mind. Salakia, Israel. No, it's not Luke 19. It's Luke. Give me a sec, Israel. It's a precept. I want a specific. It's a specific precept I'm looking for to correlate it. Because essentially, the most High told us, the more to whom much is given, much is required. And you come into this truth and you understand this truth and you take it for naught or you take it as lightly, there's going to be a heavier judgment concerning you. Right? I was looking right over it. It's the book Luke chapter 19 and verse 27. I believe that's what I want, but I think I'm looking also for the book of Luke chapter 12 verse 48, to whom much is given, much is required, because that's going to be required of you. But essentially what? This is the book of Luke chapter 19 and verse 27, Salakia. But those my enemies, which were not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. Because essentially, if you know the will of the Lord, if you know the commandments, the faith of Yahweh Shai, the prophecies, the judgments concerning Israel, concerning the heathen, and yet you stick in your sweet time, or you're still backtracking, or you're still being double-minded, or you don't really have a solid foundation, right? You're not really taking this thing serious. You might be lukewarm, you might be cold within this truth, right? You might just be like a Christian. You believe in God, but do nothing that He says, right? If you're like one of those individuals concerning this knowledge, wisdom, understanding, you don't, repent, you will be considered an enemy. When which will not that I should reign over them, bring them hither and slay them before me. Right. But I want to get that other precept in the book of Luke, the 12th chapter, right, to correlate with this. Luke chapter 12 and verse 48, it says, and that servant which knew the Lord's will, meaning you understand this truth, right? Going back to Ecclesiastes 12, and this knowledge, this rain, these spiritual waters have been given to you, right? Let me grab this. And they commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. Also like it, verse 47. Skip right over it. And the servant which knew his Lord's will and prepared not himself, meaning you didn't get yourself ready. You didn't really truly repent. Or most importantly, you didn't really truly believe. Right? It says, neither did according to his will shall be beaten with many stripes. Right? Because it has to be the judgment. Right? It's you. If the Most High, gives someone, the truth, compared to, someone in the world who he's literally put a strong delusion on them, they're blinded, through the various precepts that we could look at and go to. They don't. Why should they get the same judgment? One knew better, right? One prepared himself, right? One knew the policy, right? When you're in this, ministry, when you're in the church, when you're a part of the flock, especially as a man or a woman, there's things that you have to do. There's things that you have to put your hand to. There's talents that you have to multiply through the Spirit. And if you're not able to do that, or you don't do that at all, there's going to be consequences or repercussions for your actions, right? So let's go to back to Ecclesiastes 12. We're going to read verse 3. It says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease. Let me see this. The grinders cease because they are few. Oh, Salaki. I never actually share my screen. See, that's folly. Thought I had my screen shared already. And the grinders cease because they are few. Let me go back to this. I must read it from the top. It says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. So what does that mean? When the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves. These top politicians, the top dignitaries, senators, leaders of countries and nations, right? They're gonna bow. They're gonna be extremely frightful of what's coming to pass in these last days, because they see that the Most High is sending judgment upon the earth. They see that the Most High is using these nations to His advantage. They're getting out of control. That one point in time, the other nations that were kowtow to America, right? They would bow down, but now they see that America's weak. It's full of propaganda, deception, and lies. And the other nations, the heathen, the so-called Russians, the Chinese, the Arab, they're using this as their advantage. And this, really, on one fold, it's talking about the other nations, and on another fold, you could bring this to Esau. Essentially, it involves all of them, right? In the grand scheme of things. It says what? And the grinders cease because they are few. What is a grinder? A grinder is somebody who putting in work, right? That's what Jake always says. Even right now, I'm on my grind, right? It says, and those that look out the windows be darkened, meaning your outlook on life, your future. It's going to be hard to grasp what you can do next, right? The so-called career or occupation that you want to go into, it may not seem, as easy to obtain or easy to reach now, right? Because society took a turn for the worse. But I want to get this video, and before I get this video, I want to go into this because I want to grab this. So in jobs in 2026, because we know we still in March and they do it every month. So I couldn't find nothing for March as of yet. They're still kind of getting all the numbers, but I grabbed something for February nonetheless. So it said in February 2026, the labor market experienced a surprise contraction with the total non-farm payroll employment falling by 92,000 jobs. Right, that's a lot of jobs people losing, and the unemployment rate increasing to 4.4%, a significant downturn partially driven by healthcare and government sector declines. Right, and that's also going into what the TSA agents right now currently are not being paid by the government. Now, supposedly, you had some rich billionaires like Tyler Perry and Elon Musk that wanted to pay and help help the agency and whatnot. But even the president and his administration even declined it. So I mean, Esau is just bugging out even on his own society, right? But he would have ICE there and cause more chaos and confusion, right? So all hell's breaking loose. It says fell well below expectations, signaling a potential stall in the labor market, right? So unemployed persons, approximately 7.6 million, right? And who knows if they're, making the numbers kind of look good, look worse. Essentially it's going to come to a point where they can't hide it, right? They can't get away, right? They won't be exempt from, the true actual downfall that's taking place. Says that the labor market is struggling, right? That's what they're saying. Esau finally is acknowledging that, it's hard. It's hard. And we don't really have the answers like we used to have or we're accustomed to doing, right? But let's grab this. I got this video, and once again, this is fair use for YouTube, fair use, going into the jobs that are being lost, going back to Ecclesiastes 12 when it says, and the grinders cease because they are few. Because there's going to be more jobs lost in these last days. Why? Because businesses are going to shut down. Businesses are going to be able to keep up with the demand, the hyperinflation. Why? Because it takes a lot within the supply chain for the product for these companies to reach first off the company that needs to, and then obviously to the supplier and then the buyer, which it's only so long that people are going to be able to do that. And essentially the chain reaction is people and their businesses are going to shut down, right, or run out of money, file for bankruptcy. You know the rest. So once again, fair use.
Keep in mind, says the U.S. economy lost 92,000 jobs last month, far below the gain of 50,000 jobs experts had predicted, no doubt also impacting those market numbers. Bankrate senior economic analyst Mark Hamrick is here with more on this morning's job numbers. Hi, Mark. Thanks for coming on. So this jobs report is much worse than expected, and 50,000 is already a pretty low estimate, 50, 60,000, what they were expecting. So what stands out to you when you look at these numbers?
First of all, good to see you, Diane. This is an ugly jobs report across the board. There's very often we'll have a report that might be on the one hand, on the other hand, and one hand might have something that is more positive. You don't really see that in this report.
He said you may have a report that's more positive, but you don't really see that in this report.
And with downward revisions, not only that miss on the headline number of payrolls you see there, 92,000 jobs in the hole last month, we now have average monthly jobs creation last year of fewer than 10,000 jobs a month. And
fewer than 10,000 jobs a month. And who knows what that may be going into, right? Because if you were to ask, what are those jobs that are being created, so-called? Are they fast food restaurants? Are they mom and pop shops, small businesses? Elaborate on that. But of course, Esau, he won't really go into depth on what that actually is called.
Go back to June of last year. This isn't just a 1 month phenomenon. June of last year, you've basically had 1 month of jobs creation followed by a month of contraction in payroll, so loss of jobs. So the unemployment rate has essentially hung in there. It moved up 0.1 to 4.4%, and that's about nearly a full percent above the low that we saw in recent years. The question is, are we losing momentum with the job market, and is there a risk the unemployment rate goes higher?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, you are losing it. You're losing momentum, and the momentum is only going to get worse, and you won't be able to figure it out, and it won't it won't ever change. It's only going to continue to get worse. So that's all I wanted to bring out concerning this video, right? Because Esau even know that this this unemployment and all hell that's breaking loose within society, right, on an economical level and concerning Congress and political level, because people don't know what to believe in anymore, right? Because guess what? When it says in the days of the keeper of the house shall tremble, you got to think there's people in 2026 right now currently that are still hard staunch Republicans, that are still hard staunch Democrats, and they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea who to believe, what to listen to, what's true, right? So how do you think the people are going to do? They're going to panic. That's what it goes into the next verse. It says, "And the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low." So there's going to be nothing to do. When this takes place on a higher level, it's not going to be incremental. It's going to be exponential, right? That's how high it's going to rise. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. All the daughters of music is going to the people. On one level, we're talking about the people of this society, right? Who sings, pretty much the doctrine, the wine, and everything that America comes with. Make America great again, or you can believe it, you can achieve it. All of the lies. Or if you work hard enough, you're gonna be successful. And it's there's many things that are sung amongst the people of this society, right? Especially amongst these so-called Edomites who's proud of their country, right? Who's proud of their president, who's proud to be an American, right? But then, of course, are people that kind of indulge and entertain this society and this system. It says what they're going to be brought low. And then on another photo, Daughters of Music is talking about the music industry as well, because now everything is just about sex, drugs, alcohol, transactional uses amongst partners. Um, I mean, twerking upon cars, just exposing their body, just nothing but cleavage. There's nothing fond about, none of the daughters of music in the entertainment industry. When you look at Megan Thee Stallion, so-called Lotto, or Glorilla, and a lot of the folly, a lot of those characters, in that industry, Sexy Red, listen to their music. None of it is of substance. None of it, brings you, joy, peace. None of it. None of it is soothing, right? And they're all brought low right now because all they know is how to shun themselves and their bodies. Now, of course, on the outside, meaning this world, yeah, that they're glamorized, um, they're pretty much put on a pedestal, so to speak. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, their judgment it won't be slack, right? And they're at ease, right? Because they think they have money. It says what? Also, when they should be afraid of that which is high. And I actually wanted to grab something else. Let me see, Salaki, concerning this last precept. No, I think that was it on that, Salaki. Ecclesiastes 12:5. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way. And the almonds, well, let's grab a precept on that. What does it mean? And fear shall be in the way. Let's go something real quick. Second Ezra chapter 16. Uh 16. You can never go wrong with each one of these chapters. Fear which is high. So I think I want to go to the 15th chapter. So Salaki. We'll go to Second Ezra chapter 15, and I'm gonna start at verse. Nah, it's Salaki Israel. Both of these precepts is fire. I might bring both of them out, right? But anyways, Second Ezra chapter 16 and start at verse 18. It says the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great dearth, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear. Right? It says the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? And that's what it means when what? Also they shall be afraid of that which is nigh, and fear shall be in the way. A lot of people are extremely fearful right now, right? What do I mean by that? A lot of people are extremely fearful of what's transpiring among society, right? They're not really, people in America, they've been very, comfortable. This is a very comfortable cage, right? And what do I mean by that? When you go to a zoo, you look at an animal, you look at the lions, you look at the bears, right? You look at certain specimens, right, for the most part amongst nature. And even though they're in this cage, they still have an inherent nature within them, right? But essentially, just like when you go into when you look at these animals and you go into their true nature, especially when you look at the Sahara Desert, they travel in packs. They're very vicious. They conquer their prey depending on what animal they are. When you look at America, like you know, um, our people as well as the nations, we still have our spiritual nature within us, right? You have the Edomites, who is just the vessel of destruction, nothing but vanity. You have Jake, we bring everything to life. We're creators or whatnot, but we truly do not understand like what's gonna really transpire and how to prepare ourselves for that time. And that's what it means why when you go to Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter, also, they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way. Because now people are going to be out of their element, out of their zone. They've been so much in this comfortable cage. What's going to happen when that cage is kind of let down and everybody has to fend for themselves and everybody has to go to their, essential nature? Will they be able to protect themselves? Are they going to be merciful in that day? Right? What, or are they going to get caught out there? These are the things that are going to transpire and bring those fears that are in the way. Right? Because what? Let's read on. Verse 19, it says, behold, famine and plague and tribulation and anguish are sent as scourge for an amendment. So like right now, currently we're dealing with, hyperinflation, right? For food, for gas prices, the cost of living, right? But it's only going to get worse, right? And then now, when that transpires, it's not going to be as much food within the stores, right? Because Esau, with all the power that he has, he and him ruling, the Most High has given him this whole earth, and look what he's doing to it. He knows nothing but how to destroy it. He knows how to be evil, wicked, kill, murder, and war. That's all the so-called white man knows how to do, right? And when it escalates, when you read Revelation 18 and they reach up to heaven, the judgments are going to be more fervent, right? More steadfast, right? This verse 20. It says, for all these things, they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor always be mindful of the scourges. So that's what's going to bring more fear. That's essentially what's going to bring more fear in the last days, right? Because essentially nobody has a solution, to because America is not going to get better. If you're watching this, you think that it is, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse, right? And fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish. And that almond tree is talking about the elect, because only the elect is going to continue to flourish in these last days, right? Through the martyrdom, through the persecution, right? Through all hell breaking loose. Why? Because they've rooted and grounded themselves on Yahweh Bashim Yahushua and faith, right? As well as the fear, right? To prepare themselves to be able to do so. And the grasshopper should be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about to the streets. That desire shall fail, meaning, you're not really gonna, your career you want to, go into, you're not gonna be able to do it. It's gonna be pretty hard. That it may not be seen feasible, right? Not just your job. You may aspire, Salaki. You may aspire to become someone, right, in a certain career, besides just going to college. Because college is going to cost too much money, right? And even right now, they're saying that a lot of college, what's it called, graduates are not really finding jobs concerning whatever major they went to school for, right? So that's going to fail, right? Looking for your so-called lover within the side, that's going to fail. Why? Because the love of many is going to wax cold, right? Pursuant to the book of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 12, right? Desire shall fail, right? Because going out and have family cookouts, getting together and loving one another, that's all going to fail. Going to concerts, all of that's going to fail, because man goes to his long home, meaning a lot of people are going to die, and the mourners go about to the streets. And we've seen a little bit of that for the most part concerning what? When you look at a lot of these so-called protests, first it was free so-called Palestine. Now they're talking about, the state of Israel, because what's going on between Israel, America, and Iran, as well as what's going on, what you saw with ICE in Minnesota not too long ago. These mourners were protesting in the streets, right, across the four corners of America, right? But these people have no answers, and they don't know what's going on, right? And that's all they can really do. That's all they don't have nothing else to themselves. So it says what, verse 6, or ever the silver cord be loose, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel be broken at the cistern, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Right? And that's plain. It says vanity of vanity, said the preacher, is all vanity. Yeah, everything is vanity for the most part. Whatever clothes you have, whatever shoes, whatever car you have, whatever house you have, essentially it's all vanity. Now, one may say, well, though, you need that for life, but essentially, in the grand scheme of things, on the highest of levels, all of it is vanity. Because once you pass away and you're no longer here, it's going to go to somebody else, and it's not going to be remembered, right? We don't really have the shield, the sword of David. We don't have the temple of our forefathers that Solomon built, so on and so forth. And, the same thing even up to us. No matter how much you want to accrue within this society, all is vanity, right? Especially with the judgments being so far close that's coming upon this earth, right? It says, and moreover, because the preacher was wise and he still taught the people knowledge, yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in many proverbs. The preacher sought out to find acceptable words and that which was written upright, even words of truth, right? It says, and the words of the wise are as golds, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from what shepherd. What does it mean? What does this precept mean? The words of the wise are as golds, and nails fastened by the masters of the assemblies. Meaning there's nothing else more solidified and concrete and cemented as the truth, right? As this word that we have today through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, right? It says, and which are given from one shepherd. And who is that shepherd? That shepherd is talking about Yahweh Shai through the Spirit, right? That's John chapter 10 and verse 1. Psalms 23 and 1, right? The Lord is my shepherd. It says, and further by these, and further by these, my son, be admonished. Of making many books, there is no end. And much study is the weariness of the flesh, right? Verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It's the whole point of life, right? It's the whole purpose of why that we're here. It says, for God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil, right? And that's plain upon tables. No matter what we do, whether it be good or evil, whether it be in the world, whether it be in this truth, none of us can get away. And when I that's like one of my favorite sayings when I say that, you can't get away. And what does that mean? In layman's terms, it means nobody's exempt, right? So at the end of the day, let's grab a precept on that. So give the Romans 2. It's the book of Romans chapter 2 and verse 16. In the day where the Most High shall judge the secrets of men by Yahushua Mashiach according to my gospel, right? So going back to Ecclesiastes 12, cut it out. Going back to Ecclesiastes 12, every little thing that we do is going to get brought to the light. That's why it's important to stay in the fear and power of the Most High, because essentially, you want to be on the right side of things, right? You don't want to inherit the judgments. You don't want to inherit of course, we're still going to go through things no matter what, whether you're the 144 to 1/3, Most High willing, we're a part of that through the Spirit. But essentially, we want to have as clean of a slate, as clean hands as possible, coming into these last days, because we need that mercy. We need more faith and fear of the Most High, right? Because every last one of us, once again, is going to get judged. We're going to get judged, right? And we don't want to get caught up out there when all hell starts to break loose. Let me grab my closing precepts. So Revelation chapter 22, right? So Most High willing, going through this chapter, through the spirit and power of the Most High, was able to give the sense, right? Because Solomon is talking about the end times, right? Your so-called Christian pastor is not going to be aware of what Ecclesiastes 12 is talking about, what it's going into, what it means, the clouds and the moon and the sun, not darkness, huh? Does it mean it's going to go somewhere, right? That's what those that are without, that's what they would say, right? So that's why it's incumbent upon us to get ourselves right, to truly repent, right? To seek the Lord. And let me grab this real quick before I bring this out. Baruch, classic. It's the book of Baruch 4 and verse number 28. It says, what? For as it was your mind to go astray from the Most High, so being returned, seek him 10 times more, right? That's a complete amount, right? So what does that mean? Essentially, if you have the willpower, the inclination, the spirit to want to keep the commandments, want to have the faith in Yahweh Shai, want to be righteous, right? Want to put off the works of the flesh, want to put off the works of darkness and wickedness, right? You got to seek the Lord all you have, right? If you got to wake up early in the morning and you might have to give some stuff to the Most High before you go to work, that's what you may have to do, right? As soon as you at work, if you have downtime, throughout the lunch, throughout the day, you got to probably more than likely give time to the Lord, because you're gonna be distracted. Your mind gonna be elsewhere, and you know what? You need as much studying as possible to build yourself up with that word, because that word has to be within your heart within these last days. Because when all hell breaks loose and we don't have the luxury of the internet and the luxury of the breakdowns and the videos, whatever you have, that's it, right? So let's go to this book of Revelation, chapter 22 and verse 11. It says, "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he that is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is holy, let him be holy still." So whatever you are through the Spirit, continue. Essentially, if you're righteous or you're wicked, that's who you're gonna be essentially, right? So you got to pick a side. If you're aspiring to be righteous, if you're striving to do it, you got to give all your mind, power, and strength with everything in your ability to be able to do so. But if you're filthy, that's all you're gonna ever be. Why? Because you don't want to change. Why? Because you're not really putting in the work. Why? Because it's too hard. Because it's too much, right? And essentially, Al Bashim Yahushua is telling us through the Spirit. This is you're gonna have to pick a side, right? Because essentially, in these last days, there's no in between. There's no middleman. There's no lukewarm. Either you're good or you're evil. You're righteous or you're wicked, right? So let me grab this closing precept real quick. It's the book of Luke, right? Luke chapter 19 and verse 11. So knowing the signs of the times, how much more do we need to give ourselves and be apt to reading, praying, fasting, studying, right? While we still have the ability to do so, right? Why? And obviously Passover is in less than a week, right? So now, I mean, we got to continue to purge the leaven and continue to increase even after that, right? Most High willing through the Spirit. So there's the book of Luke chapter 19 and verse 12. And he said, what? And he said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. And that kingdom is talking about us, right? Israel through the Spirit. Because according to Luke chapter 17 and verse 20, right, the Yahweh shall say, what? The kingdom of heaven abideth in you, right? So we got to manifest that by walking in the words of Yahweh Shem Shai, right? To bring that to life. Because righteousness exalteth a nation. When you read the book of Proverbs chapter 14, I believe verse 34, right? And he said what? Verse 13, and he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I come. So most high willing, Israel, this has been edifying through the Spirit. We have to be continuously occupied through the Spirit and power of the Most High while we still have the ability to be able to do so, and understand the signs of the times. Understand, what Solomon meant in Ecclesiastes the 12th chapter. Remember thy Creator in the days of thy youth. While you still have the time to be able to do so, give all that you can to the Lord, right? And you should never do amiss. But with that, Israel, I want to give all honor and glory to Habashim Shai. The Most High willing, this has been edifying. Kwam Yashal. Shalom.